Victorian London was overcrowded. Its population expanded rapidly as people moved in to fill jobs as labourers, factory and dock workers. But the accommodation they found, if they could find it at all, was small, cramped, dilapidated, crawling with vermin and often charged at extortionate rates. For some working-class families, this meant that all you could afford to rent was a room in a house, shared with several other families, or, failing that, merely a section of a room, the share of a bed on a relay system, or even a sleeping space under a bed. Yes, that was the terrible state of housing you would find if you were to travel back in time and walk the streets looking for a room for the night. Today, in an account by George Haw, a contemporary writer on living conditions in London, you will discover how people suffered to live in one-room houses, described as no more a home than a hut. The soul-destroying conditions in which tenants existed is shocking, despite late 19th century public health acts. Find out how families worked, cooked, washed and slept in smoke-filled rooms. What's more, some places were infested with rats, to the extent that, through the night, children had to take it in turns to stop them attacking. When you have heard this account, you may ask yourself, is it any wonder that public houses were so popular, and that ever-present escape from reality, drink? Before we move on, if you're interested in history like this, and you want to find out more about what life was really like for people in the past, please consider subscribing for more content. If you'd like to support what we make for you, check out the description for links to ways you can help us continue bringing the past alive. There are nearly 400,000 people in London dwelling in what Mr. Sidney Webb calls the soul-destroying conditions of the one-roomed home. It is a population almost equal to that of Leeds, surely a sufficiently grave fact to call for a moment or two's reflection, if nothing more. Where do they dwell, these 400,000 people? Where is this city population within a city's population to be found? It lies all around you, east, west, north, south, and often in the least suspected quarters. You may find overcrowded one-roomed homes adjoining wealthy West End squares, in the most respectable streets, and in parishes which have some of the greatest natural advantages in London. But chiefly, one need hardly state, in the inner belt. Here they are to be seen at their worst, in small rooms, dirty rooms, foul rooms, top rooms, bottom rooms, back rooms, front rooms, and, worse than all, in cellar dwellings. Let us see how these one-roomed dwellers live. They live like animals, said a London medical officer, a little unkindly. Many of them may, but most of the one-roomed tenth are good-living people, no more animalized than they are submerged. It is among them, however, that the largest proportion of the overcrowded are to be found. Quite half of them come under our category of lawbreakers under the Public Health Act. The wonder is how those of our fellow citizens who are overcrowded in single-roomed tenements can find it in their hearts to continue living. What has life to offer them? The worst of all is that so many of them get used to their lot. Their inert subjection reminds one of old Hammond in News from Nowhere. It will be remembered the old man described slums to his visitor as places of torture for innocent men and women. Or worse, stews for rearing and breeding men and women in such degradation that torture should seem to them mere ordinary and natural life. The life of the one-roomed overcrowded poor is torture, and let it be told with shame, the hardest burden falls upon the women. To the miseries of their habitations and the pains of incessant childbearing, they must add the night and day drudgery of their stifling little homes. Cooking one day, they fill the house with fumes from bad ovens, for the ovens are generally worthless in the one-roomed homes. Washing the next day, in saucepans and basins, they scatter soap-suds everywhere and fill the place with steam, afterwards stretching the wet linen in double rows from wall to wall. There may be a child ill in bed. There are certain to be children crawling about too young to go to school. Yet the women must do all the work in their single rooms just the same. From week to week, one year's end to another, this is the unbroken round of thousands of our London women. As to the men and elder children, who can wonder at the husband flying from such a home soon after his return from work for the comfort and brightness and companionship of the drinking palace at the corner? Who can wonder at the children, on leaving school in the evening, preferring the streets to such an overcrowded home? Then at night, the only bed in the room, saturated by the steam and fumes of the day, is occupied by as many as can crowd into it. Father, mother, sons and daughters, the overplus sleeping under the bed because it is warmer there than the rest of the floor. Where otherwise, when you recall that among the one-roomed 10th there are some families of more than 12 to a room, such as the Camberwell case of 17 to a room. We have also seen that there are some 3,000 people in London living 8 and more in a room, and over 9,000 living 7 and more in a room. At the very lowest, 26,000 from among the one-roomed 10th are living 6 and more to a room. So that, if the elder children and the men shun these unhomely homes for worse places in the day, they are forced to crowd them to a terrible extent in the night. The jaded wife and mother, poor heart, unlike the others, is forced to live in these soul-destroying conditions, both day and night, until, when the soul is finally destroyed, she too takes to drink like the husband, and then to the winds with self-respect and morals, children, husband, and home. A one-roomed home is bad enough for ordinary living, but when it is turned into a workshop, what must its condition be then? Yet thousands of these single-roomed tenements are not only used for sleeping, living, washing, drying, and cooking, but as workshops, and sometimes as stores. If they are not always used as such by the men, then it is by the women. Many costermongers store their stock in their one-roomed homes at night. Others do a little fish-curing in their single rooms, and any number are cobblers, small cabinet-makers, and bird-fanciers. As to the women's work, how many times have I seen the women in their one-roomed homes surrounded by piles of pasteboard boxes for fancy work, which they are making for 1 shilling 6pence a gross, or by heaps of stay boxes or boot boxes, which bring them 2 shillings 10pence a gross. Sometimes I have found the floors of these one-roomed homes strewn with artificial flowers, which are being made for 1 a gross. Sometimes with matchboxes at 2 1/4 pence a gross, and at other times with straw bags which are sold to the poor for marketing at 1 each, and made for about 1 a dozen. The one-roomed home may mean nothing to the dead, but surely it must mean something to the living, who have to keep their dead in the room where they eat and sleep. Whatever it may mean to them, it has to be endured. One day, when I was walking through his parish in Hoxton with the Reverend J. Cartmel Robinson, he pointed to a house with a remark. It was there I found the dead body of a child on the only bed of a one-roomed home, and when I asked where they put the body when the family used the bed at night, I was told it was placed until morning upon the only shelf in the house, where they kept the food. That is not so bad as the family I was told of elsewhere, who sat up all night to keep the rats off the dead body of a child. Neither is it to be compared with the case heard before a police court magistrate, when the medical officer of St. Giles asked for a closing order in respect to houses where the rats had made large holes in the rooms. He stated in evidence that in one of the rooms children had to take turns to keep awake during the night to prevent the rats attacking the others in their sleep. Many a cellar dwelling in London is infested with rats. Life in West London describes several in the neighbourhood of Fitzroy Square, where one little expects to find any. Here some of the underground tenements are described as swarming with rats. Since so many of our fellow citizens are forced to keep company with rats, can we wonder that some of them should become rat-like in character? In Mr. Arthur Morrison's tale, A Child of the Jago, The people are unreservedly described as rats. They are not likened unto rats, but are literally described as such, creeping in and out of their rat holes. It is not an elegant expression, neither is it a just one, but it is significant as conveying a realistic writer's impression. Can these cellar dwellings of the one-roomed 10th ever be anything else but rat holes? The Public Health Act says no underground room shall be occupied as a dwelling, except under specified conditions. Yet these conditions are defied alike by the local authorities and by the tenants. In the course of an inspection in St. Pancras last summer, Dr. Hamer of the London County Council found that one of the underground rooms, which had been recently closed by the vestry, was occupied illegally again. Moreover, he discovered underground rooms illegally occupied in houses subject to periodical inspection by the vestry's sanitary inspectors. Where the local authorities are more eager to prevent this kind of thing than they seem to be in St. Pancras, then other difficulties arise. For instance, the medical officer of Mile End stated in a recent report, "Proceedings were taken against the occupiers of a number of underground rooms, when it was found that the law was very defective in regard to these places. It was held that some members of a family might occupy these rooms with impunity, provided the parents also rented another room above ground in the same house, and so we failed to establish the cases. I am afraid, until it is enacted that the fact of finding people occupying these dwellings as sleeping apartments shall constitute separate occupation, we shall not get to the root of this matter." The one-roomed 10th are spread all over London. They are to be found in the least likely as well as the most likely places. In Dr. Hamer's St. Pancras report, it is shown that 18 houses in one particular ownership had 32 overcrowded rooms. All the houses were in a more or less dirty and dilapidated condition, and many sanitary defects existed in them. It may be news to the well-to-do dwellers in the neighbourhood of Regent's Park to learn that the same medical officer found 2,370 people in the Regent's Park district living in overcrowded one-roomed tenements. This statement does not cover all who dwell in one-roomed homes in that locality, but only those who overcrowd such homes. Over the water, in the parish of Lambeth, there are 2,000 people living 5 to a room, and over 800 living 6 to a room. In the February report of the Kensington medical officer, a case is quoted where the inspector found in one room a married couple and a man of 22, a young woman of 17 and boys aged 14 and 9. Further west still, in Fulham, Dr. Young of the London County Council reports a case of a family consisting of father, mother, an adult and 5 children, who all sleep in one room of about 864 cubic feet. The overcrowded among the one-roomed 10th do not know the meaning of home. How can they, living in such ungodly plight? Where home is a hovel, and dull we grovel, forgetting that the world is fair? Home is a word fast losing its meaning in London. The home, as Mazzini puts it, is the recognised place where between the mother's kiss and the father's caress the child's first lesson of citizenship is learnt. But what lessons of citizenship can we expect the children of the one-roomed 10th to learn? The poor law schools and prisons supply the answer. Many of these habitations are less homes than huts. Nay, the huts of primitive man were much more homely than some of our people's dwelling places today. There is a striking picture in Mr. Locke Worthington's book on The Dwellings of the People, showing a group of primitive dwellings of various nations. Among others in the picture, we see the huts and stockades of an early British village, contrasted with the slums and factories of a modern town. No intelligent man would hesitate to prefer the healthy habitations of our forefathers to the gloom and depression and insanitation of the airless, sunless, one-roomed dwellings of today.